How to take apart Softub motor. We've got a leak. So we're going to try and find the leak. So we got to take the cover off. What you first do down here, you untie this tightener rope here, and then you also undo this buckle that is really hard to see, but there's a buckle right there. You undo that, and then you pull the green cover off. That's the first thing. So the cover is now loosened, and this part here, you lift it up, and then the hole, you can slide the cover out and around this by turning this thing to fit through the hole. So the cover is completely off, setting right there. Now what do you do? Well, now we got to take this styrofoam cover off, the top one here, and this you carefully pull apart as you slide it up and around this stuff. This is a two-hand job. Be very careful so you don't split this thing, because it is not inexpensive. It is split already from the factory all the way up to here, but be careful spreading it around this tube right here. Okay? Okay. Here's the cover laying on its side. There's still a couple of tubes and electrical that run from the brain up inside, so we obviously need to be careful not to stretch those and not break or kink the air lines here. And we're going to check for leaks and keep going. At this point I'm feeling the hoses to see if there's any breaks in them, and then I will continue pulling things apart. Probably pull this foam out here and get down inside of here. The motor is sitting long ways in here, and what I'm thinking is that there's an O-ring seal in somewhere around in this area here that needs to be pulled. The cap needs to be pulled off, and then the O-ring seal in there is what's leaking, is my hunch. And we'll see as we keep going if I find it before then. Here's looking inside the top of the motor. The impeller is down inside there, so that's around that impeller is what I'm guessing is where the O-ring is leaking, and that's a little further down inside of all of this stuff. So this piece here, I think I need to take off right here, right where these little holes are right here. There's little plastic fittings, and they look like this, and they slide right in there. So very carefully I pried those out. So that motor controller, it's not a motor, it's a controller, I pulled off the top. This is the ground strap right here that actually goes down through the bottom so that it's touching the ground. So by removing that previous black cover with those little plastic pin things, whatever they're called, then I was able to pull the whole motor out. I needed to have an extra set of hands on the bottom piece right there so that I could pull this out. I can feel that the foam is wet near this top side up here, which is right where I believe that O-ring is. So now I'm going to pull off this foam and then see what's underneath. So there's the foam cover to the right, came off of right here, and I'm looking for a leak in this gap here, because if there's a leak here, typically you'll see a bunch of white, which is the water calcifying, like a little bit right here, you kind of see it. So that could be a leak. But the other thing that I noticed when I pulled this cover off here was that this piece here was loose and it screws on. You can see the threads. So I tightened that one, and this one on this side was also loose. It also has threads back underneath here, and so I tightened that. I actually think that's fixed it, but I might as well go after the rest of this. Pull this thing off, and I'll see what the O-ring looks like underneath there to see if I can see what might look like something that's leaking. Before I pull that seal off, I just want to show you what I'm seeing here in the white, that white like calcium buildup stuff. Right between those two red hoses, just behind the white on top of the black, you'll see some white buildup there. And that white is an indication typically of a leak, and that the water has dried as it was leaking. So I really think that that is where the problem was, that those things were just loose, and now we have fixed the leaking issue. But just because I want to do a thorough job, I'm going to pull this cover off anyway with these Phillips that are around here, just to be safe. So I've loosened this collar here and then removed that. There's an O-ring inside of there, which then obviously there's an O-ring inside of this collar, and with them being loose there isn't enough pressure, and that's why I think that they were leaking out of there. And there's actually even water sitting on top of here, which there really shouldn't be water on top. It should only be on the inside of there. So I think that's where our leaks were coming from, was between here. But in double checking, I am pulling all of these off. One of these was rusty. This one here was the rusty one. And one of them was frozen, which is that one. And that one broke off. Putting some vice grips on it to try and turn it. Looks like there's some rust on there too. And that happens to be in this hole right here. So now I'll separate this. I'll lift this off, and then I'll use the vice grips on what's left to pull it out. Looking at it first, if I need to, I'll put some penetrant on it that won't damage this material, so that it will help to loosen it. So the cap of the motor is off, or pump I should say, and it's sitting down here. The O-ring, here's the O-ring right here. So I'm going to take that off and inspect it, clean it. So far it looks fine and it feels fine. It doesn't feel dry or brittle or cracked or anything like that. Obviously the one screw head that broke off is this one right here. So, and you can see that's rusted. This one, this hole also has a little bit of rust in it, which would mate up with this other screw right here. And obviously they're on the bottom of the pump. So because they're on the bottom of the pump, when this piece right here was leaking, the water would come down and around and hit the bottom here, and that's where it would collect before it was coming out. Apparently by this rust it's leaked before, and because this hasn't been an ongoing problem, this just started again. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this out, I'm going to clean these, I'm going to clean this O-ring because I don't see at this point that it needs replacing. I think my problem was that this was loose and that the other one right here was loose when it's sitting on top of this that goes right in here. Okay, does that make some sort of sense? Right on top of there. O-ring, and all of this housing will get clean. I'll clean this up real good. And then either put some O-ring lube on here or Vaseline. Both work just as good. Alright, that's where I'm at. And then I'll start putting it back together. Screws in. Replace the one that was bad. And tightened up these because they were loose before, and I actually think that's where the water was leaking from. And now I'm going to reinstall this inside of there, and then close it all up and put it back together. Pretty simple. This is a superior design to the other one that I saw on YouTube, because this one has 6 screws in it instead of just the 4. This tempered plastic or whatever it is, through the heat starts to warp in between. On the 4, it's so wide that the leaking tends to happen right in the center. With this having 6, this all looked totally flat through this area all the way around. No gaps in the down below in this area here. The gaps all looked real good all the way around. So that's why I do not think that this is leaking at all, and I didn't see any water or of the white stuff that, like here, that is typical of a leak, that leaks and dries and leaks and dries, and but these are now tight, so I don't think they're going to leak. Okay, tricky part is this cord here needs to be pushed down through inside of here while the motor is going inside of that area. So I need 2 people to help do that, and I would imagine you might need the same. So the motor's back in. These little dealy bobbers, they actually work really well as far as they're holding this top piece back in just fine. All 4 of those. We're running the air lines back inside, underneath here. I added some tension to this so that fits tight. It's just an air line, but yeah, why not? And everything else. This is your light here. I had clipped the zip tie that goes on that, so I need to zip tie that back on. And other than that, I think I'm ready to put it back together.